Welcome everybody back to Segal Talks here at the Martin E. Segal Theater Center, the Graduate Center, CUNY at City University in Manhattan, in New York City. It's week 11 of our talks, and 11 weeks. Every day we talk 5 times a week with theater artists from New York, from America, but mostly, from around the world, globally. If you look at our announcement on the website, you will find out. But it's been very eye-opening to see how our colleagues and friends around the world are experiencing this time of Corona in their own country, in their own four walls, and how vastly different it is country to country, how significant politics and political leadership is, how significant the changes and support for the arts are, what a difference it makes. So that, yes, though we are looking now at structures in a way, everything is being barely put to the open in front of our eyes in the light of the sun through this corona virus, a catalyst that kind of like an X-ray shows what is what, and as some say, like on the ocean, and the flood recedes, and we see who has clothes on and who not, what's working and what is not. And yes, there are systems that do work better. It's still catastrophic in the US, over 1 million infections, and the next one is Brazil, and I think even Italy is 200,000 or 300,000. So, and we do not know what will happen. Will there be second, third waves? Numbers are not good from countries that reopened. Infections are showing up again, and of course, for us who are in the world of theater and performance, it's devastating news. We do not know when we will open. We've been hit hardest and first. People are out of work, out of jobs. The next 9-10 months, everything has been canceled, and theater artists have been freelancing so much. Often also do work in the service industry, in restaurants and others. That also doesn't exist. So it's a terrible situation. Unemployment in the U.S. is close to 50 million. Unimaginable, and social unrest on the streets for good reason erupted. This kind of a match that was put to the gasoline through confinement and mishandling of this crisis, and the killing of George Floyd. And this week we have been focusing on this. We heard from the National Black Theater, from our friends Hope, from our friends yesterday, Avoye Tiempo, and before from Camilla Woodard, James Scruggs, so many. And today we have with us in Japan, they would say a living legend. This is Woodie King Jr., someone who for 50 years, actually it's exactly 50 years, ran a black theater at the New Federal in New York. He is called the King, which is also his name, but this is how he's called. And he has seen decades and over, and has been deeply involved in what is happening. So Woodie, first of all, thank you for joining us. Where are you right now?
I'm in my apartment in New York, and I'm sequestered like everybody else. I go out with my gloves and my mask when I go out to get essentials to exist within the apartment. But it's the first time, I would say, I've had a chance to deal with all the essential things that I have in the apartment and the things that are not essential at all. I got over, 600 or 700 books, and I said, let me go through them and see what hardcovers are first editions. And lo and behold, I got about 150 first editions. So I said, wow, what can I do with these? So I just put them in a box, and perhaps when the pandemic is over, I will take them out again. And then there's so many things that you can get rid of, including articles that, especially when you are 50 years old, reviews that you got in 1971, covers of magazines when you got in 73. You said, well, what use are they now? Those are focus questions. You focus in on the rest of your life, and you I said, wow, I read this play, but I read this play in 1997. Let me read it again. Because you don't remember. You remember, you didn't do it. Why didn't you do it? Why didn't you produce this play in 1997? That's what sequestering really means. And come to mean that within the structure you find yourself, you work it out. It's like Zoom. I think I was talking to my wife. I said, wow, man, 4 months ago, no one had heard of Zoom. And now everyone is talking about Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah, the world has really changed. What is your neighborhood? When you look out of the window, what street are you on in
Riverside Drive.
Riverside Drive?
Yes. I look out
So,
the window and other people living on Riverside Drive. I do exercises daily, and I look out my window and I count the number walking past on the other side of the street with masks on, and children with masks on, and those who do not wear masks. And I say, wow, and it's always in that hour, 15, 20 minutes, it's like nothing happened.
yeah. This was a very emotional, tough week, a hard week. It galvanized the movement. How did you experience this week? George Floyd, the killing, and the demonstrations. What comes to your mind? What came to your mind?
Well, I've lived through other periods of time where our heroes was killed, but George Floyd is a hero because it was televised. It was seen by a camera, and everyone witnessed it. And so therefore, there could be no excuses. Asphyxiation, it was very clear. He was asphyxiated and he couldn't breathe. And that enraged us all, okay? Breonna Taylor's killing was when you break in someone's house without a permit, and I understand they made a law that fast, that can no longer happen. You cannot break in without a search warrant. You must have a search warrant now. So, George Floyd's murder, that's the best way to put it, has caused across the world reactions, and these reactions has caused a kind of looking at reality, and they are all very angry, very pissed off, very concerned, and so changes are made. Unemployment happened. Unemployment as a result of the pandemic, coronavirus, and all of these things are happening. I just read about Darren Walker at the Ford Foundation and how they are making drastic changes in dealing with all of the unemployed, all of the small corporations and nonprofits, just to keep people on the payroll, if you will, and alive, if you will, during this crisis. So I look at the George Floyd murder as a mother, a brother, as a family, having lost a beloved son, and they are grieving, and that grieving is not unlike all these other killings, but we didn't have instant replay on things like Emmett Till or things like the murder of Fred Hampton, or we didn't have that then. The new technology has brought it into our living room. It's almost like as we are talking now, you and I, this is in people's living room, and they can look at it and they can say, wow, we want to be informed. And you and the Segal Institute are informing us about issues and things that we can talk about. You probably do understand, before there was these kind of talks, it was confined to the Black community.
Nobody listened.
Yeah, you had no ears. Nobody could listen. They had to wait for the Black newspaper, which came out once a week. Black radio, which is not listened to by white Americans. So it was very difficult. They would listen to music, hip hop, rap had not come in, but the new media, I think, is sort of like reaching everybody, and everybody is our audience, and everybody is worldwide. I think the Segal Talks, we said earlier, reached something like a couple of hundred countries.
Take us back to the moment when you started the New Federal Theater. What was your idea also for a Black theater in New York and America? What was your vision, your dream, your hope? When did that happen?
1970. I came from 5 years at a company called Mobilization for Youth on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And we trained young people in the arts, dance, theater, and film. And when the director moved to a company called Henry Street Settlement, I moved there with him. And they had just a building called the Henry Street Playhouse. And we started programming plays to have into the theater because he was a new director. He was starting anew. And the first thing was he wanted to build onto the center. And he built another small theater, 2 other small theaters. And I was the programmer. And,
oh, really? Mm-hmm.
And in 1970, he named me the director of the arts. And what did I want to call the theater? And I thought about it, reading Orson Welles and John Houseman and those kind of contributors to the American theater scene. I named it the New Federal Theater. And it became a tag that stuck. And what I wanted to do was, I think what I wanted to do was sort of like integrate into the American theater. So it was people of color and women to sort of like integrate them into the American theater. But the difficulty I saw almost immediately was if I did the play and it won awards, then the whole play could go in to the other theater, whether it was the New York Shakespeare Festival, Chelsea Theater Center, the American Place Theater, Lincoln Center Theater, or and then it spread. I could go to the Bermuda International Theater Festival, the Pan-African Theater Festival, if I took the whole project, and the interference would be minimal. And these people who were in the play, from Denzel Washington back then, or Elizabeth Van Dyke back then, it was just so many artists, Garrett Morris, people you see on television now who are older, was there at the beginning.
Samuel Jackson, yeah.
Yeah, Samuel Jackson, LaTanya Richardson Jackson did plays with us. Ntozake Shange for colored girls who can consider suicide when the rainbow is enough. We did her play. And and we can move the whole play because people like Bernie Gershton, Joseph Papp, Lynn Meadow, Robert Calvin, if it had won all the awards, they didn't come in and change it.
Mm-hmm.
It stayed intact. And so if a critic came to see it, he said, wow, this is the same play I saw at the New Federal. Mm. It's wonderful. It just reaches now an audience that they didn't have there. It was only Black people there. But as they died off, and that system said, oh, we got to change. We got to start doing plays by our white writers.
Did you feel that at the time you started out, were you part of the New York theater scene, or was it kind of separate?
No, we weren't a part of the New York theater scene. I was a part of it because I came in with all these degrees. I came in like a tornado. I came in, it's like you couldn't tell me I couldn't do anything. I did the Voodoo Macbeth. That was 20 characters. The Conjure Man Dies. I did huge plays because I had the backing of the Great Henry Street Settlement. And it wasn't long before, as a result of that, I was working on special projects with the Rockefeller Foundation, special projects with the Ford Foundation. And that just spreaded my, in a sense, just spreaded my visibility and my use of theater surveys led me to other writers, other productions, the Free Southern Theater, theater in other cities, theater artists who wanted to be in New York and would send stuff, and they would come into New York, And that still is applicable to today. Today, our latest, for example, a year and a half ago, we did a play called Looking for Leroy. That just came to me in the mail. Mm-hmm. And we did it as a production. Because from the inception, we worked with the Actors Union, Actors Equity Association. And I think it's because I was a member so early, Mm-hmm. So I just felt it was something that we should do. A lot of companies do not do that. And so later in life, artists, actors, if they are not a part of that system, they're not integrated into the American theater.
I mean, do you see right now in these weeks the Dear White Broadway manifesto, and people say Broadway is racist? Do you feel things have changed? Was it the same at that time? Is it better now? Is it worse?
It's changed. At one time, New Federal might be doing 7 or 8 plays a year. We had 3 spaces. At that time, it did not cost as much. to do a play on Broadway now, a regular play may cost $1.5 million. You know, there we don't have those kind of investors on Black theater. Musicals may cost 3 or 4 million, you know, maybe more. There's a play on Broadway that the pandemic, of course, closed it down, called Ain't Too Proud by the Temptations. And all of the Temptations are from Detroit, Motown Records. And I'm from Detroit. I grew up in Detroit. So it's like guys you would see in a restaurant, guys you would see at the gym. Now, you have actors playing them, you know. But back then, the change is they're part of history, like New Federals will be, without a question, some sort of part of history. And we have to have, hopefully, discussions like this to help correct that history. We're in the National African American Museum in Washington. We're in the Schomburg in New York. You name the museum, our work and our history is included in that. But Frank, you know, this medium, and I hope you recorded this, is something that is collectible. It is useful in research. Young people cannot say, wow, I didn't know that existed. It does exist. And they said that, young people, 71, 72, 73, 74, 1970, up to maybe 1976, could say, I did not know that. And then we started winning awards prior to that. The Drama Desk Award for Black girls. So the white world knew about Black girl. Then a movie was made with Viola Davis. The Taking of Miss Janie, Drama Critic Circle Award we won. And those kind of awards had not been afforded to African-American theaters before. It was a raisin in the sun and then the big leap forward. And there was a gap between. And now I would say we might do 2 plays a year because of the cost. When we would do the same amount of money, we'd do 4 plays a year. But the cost has jumped. Director's cost, set cost, all the material. It's not just actors' cost. While a 4-character play you could do with 9 people, that may take 15. They gotta get paid, you know? It's like, I don't wanna say it's like, but if you look at a Zoom show like this, you need a producer, you need you always need something else, someone else to assist. You can't do it all. You cannot. And you try to find people who are experts in that field to work on it because they want to integrate into American system. And my search found women set designers, women light designers, women sound designers, and they would come in for those 6 weeks, and you have to house them, pay their transportation in, but they would get the visibility that they had not had before in small towns. So the change, I don't know, the change, as far as I'm concerned, has been about, is going to continue about George Floyd. The change has not been like this worldwide ever.
So in the beginning of the new Federal Theater, you produced shows that would be on Broadway. You right away with your means, you had shows that you could put up.
I produced shows that could be produced, integrating into the American theater, was not on Broadway.
So you started at the Henry Street Settlement, and then it would go over with your friends and the.
No, they were my friends. Joseph Papp would come over and see the plays. You remember Joseph Papp?
Sure, of course.
Okay, come over and see. I like this, and he would say, "Wow, I don't have to do anything. Just move this to Lincoln Center. That's all I have to do."
Mm-hmm.
And start the payroll. Then that's all he had to do.
Mm-hmm. What happened to the Black theater movement? I think, if I remember right, numbers are down in America. Theaters like dedicated, to Black writers, Black theater work. Do you confirm that there is less attention being paid? How is your funding situation?
Yes, so less attention being paid because these foundations, federal, city, state, and private, now can go to the Signature Theater, can go to white nonprofits, and they are all over New York, they're all over America. The Goodman Theater in Chicago, the Seattle Rep, and they can go to them because they may have a marketing department of 15, 20 people in that marketing department, in the audience development department, in that subscription department, and they could get more bangs for their buck. And they were asked to buy more sophisticated fundraiser. But the Black theater movement, as far as I'm concerned, still exists.
Who are your colleagues in the Black theater movement you exchange with in the American landscape?
Well, Black Spectrum Theater. We're all part of something called a Coalition of Theaters of Color. National Black Theater. Mind Builders. The St. Louis Black Repertory Theater. Eileen Morris at the Ensemble Studio Theater. Plowshares in Detroit, Michigan. These theaters all exist to produce African American works, and then there's the National Black Theater Festival in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, that's run by Jackie Alexander and the wife of the late Larry Leon Hamlin, Sylvia Hamlin. They run that. So those are people we relate to at least monthly or weekly. It's like how you doing? How's it going there? Or what have you, The Billie Holiday Theater. These are just to name components and people who view these theaters as part of the Black theater movement.
Do you feel America has done enough to support the Black theater movement?
No. It's like, but neither has, America. Yeah, America consists of Black Americans, white Americans, and let's face it, Black Americans individually, white Americans individually, foundations. It's just so many foundations, you know, while $10,000 would mean the world to me, it doesn't mean anything for Lincoln Center. They want a hit. They want a huge hit. But the pandemic is sort of like bringing a light to all of this. Now we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same situation, if you will, that we found ourselves in when we started up. And how is that? When we started up, we had a kind of energy, a kind of need. And out of that energy and that need, I could get a job at Henry Street. And out of that need, we could get someone into the New York State Council on the Arts, Miss Vinette Carroll, the late Miss Vinette Carroll, or into the National Endowment for the Arts with a man named Vantal Whitfield and A.B. Spellman. And these people were simply a phone call away. So that helped tremendously. But they had very small budgets within the foundation, within federal, city, and state, you know?
And you cannot make these calls anymore. There's nobody on the other line if you would make these calls at the moment.
Nobody you can make these calls to who know you, who know your work. You have to send, something else. First it went from 3 or 4 page proposal in detail. Then it went to VHSs. Then it went to, you got to send this, and they may look at it, they may not.
Mm. So there was no structural support. It was support for projects and for individual plays, but not a sustainable support towards your organization.
No.
Mm.
The Henry Street Settlement supported New Federal Theater as an organization, which meant a secretary, me, and a coordinator. That was it. And they had trouble raising money for all their social programs. But we prevailed. We prevailed for what, 50 years? And now we are at 543 West 42nd Street, where we rent space, have use of 3 theater spaces. And 543, back in the day, was where Lee Strasberg of the Actors Studio held classes. And then it went into it was just a terrible rat-infested building until Castillo came in and remodeled it and redid it. And that was done through, he's gone now, God rest his soul, Fred Newman.
Fred Newman, yeah. It's in Hell's Kitchen, right? Yeah. Your idea to get involved theater, did it come out of the civil rights movement? Were you part of that?
No, it came out of Detroit, out of the university.
So what was your idea? Why did you say, I'm going to do theater, this is what I will, black theater, what this is my mission?
I was an actor, and I started a theater in Detroit. And I would come to New York once a year and see plays. I would write letters, and these letters were answered sometimes they weren't. But I would write to people like Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee or Fred O'Neill, who's the head of the Actors. He was the head of Actors Equity Association. Lloyd Richards, I would write to, because he went to Wayne State, where I went.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was an actor. I came in and I did plays for a while, and TV commercials at the beginning of that. And I would take my money and produce plays. Took my money and bought property in Harlem and moved my family there.
Hmm. So when you were in Detroit growing up, what was the moment, or what was when you said, I'm going to become an actor? What did you see?
A Raisin in the Sun toured, and it came to a downtown theater, and I had found a way that you could see plays if you wrote reviews of them for the small Black newspapers around. So I would go in and see a play, and I got to meet the cast then of the touring A Raisin in the Sun. And they were just wonderful. I would walk them from the hotel, from the theater back to their hotel, from the theater back to, and it was almost like, you again, you're here again. And yes. And then I started looking for theater schools in Detroit, outside of the university, because you couldn't get any plays at the university.
Why couldn't you get in? Because
you were Black. They were doing.
There was no chance to get in.
You could not get into plays. It would be a white director. It would be a white play. It would be his interpretation of that play, you know? And so I went to a theater school, a very famous theater school. And at that theater school, a woman named Teresa Way Merrill was a grande dame who was in a wheelchair at that time. And she was the founder of Willow Way School of Theater. And it was in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. They would train me, but they told me right up, we don't have any African-American actors here. You are it. And you can be in these plays, but you cannot do intimate roles with white women on the stage. They told me, and they gave me a scholarship. And that was my first foray into this theater thing that trained me to be an actor. But I got to 4 years, I got a certificate, and she would give me talks, and in those talks, she would let me know who's coming in this year. Ilka Chase, Harold Clurman, Basil Rathbone, all these famous actors. And they all urged me to check out New York.
Mm.
Now, how would I do that? How would you get to New York, you know? And they had something called, Detroit is an automobile city, and you drive cars into Pennsylvania for these companies. And the closer you could get to New York, usually was Pennsylvania, and a bus from there into New York for 2 or 3 days and back to Detroit. We found ways to exist. You find ways,
Hmm. Did you ever play when you studied for 4 years? Did you get a main role? Was there ever a play by a Black writer?
No, these were all scenes, monologues or scenes.
Hmm.
Harold Clurman were contemporary of so many New Yorkers. And he talked to me about the Actors Studio,
Mhm.
you know, of which I'm very in sync and a member now. Back then, nobody knew them.
Yeah, yeah. The great Harold Kluman, who some people say talked the group theater into being, and actually also taught at CUNY, um, and where we are. When you came to New York, did you feel the only chance to do your theater, you have to do it on your own, you have to be produced, you have to be the creative force behind it? Was there any openings in what you know people now say, and you say too, in the kind of white theater, the theaters where it's run by white institutions, white people? Were there openings at that time of the late 60s, middle 70s, where we think of a time of change? Or,
Well, I didn't think of time would change, but I was very close with Wynn Hanman at the American Place Theater. Very close. And, but that was after that, I became close with Joseph Papp at the Public Theater,
mm-hmm.
you know, and after that, Robert Calfin at Chelsea Theater Center.
Mm-hmm.
But they were wonderful producers, you know, but they had their agenda of plays, and they were going to do 1 or 2 plays a year out of 10, 11 plays. They weren't going to jump in and
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of plays by Black authors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What did you learn most over those 50 years of producing, which is an incredible amount of time? I really want to congratulate you and show all of our respect for being such a pioneer, for having carried that wagon, through the fields for so long and also so successfully. What did you learn? What did it teach you?
Well, I would say each play that you read must stand on its own and deeply rooted in literature. You must be deeply rooted in literature. And before coming to New York and in the early years of New York, literature, whether it was Chekhov or James Baldwin or Ralph Ellison or John A. Williams, I am equally fond of all of them. Turgenev, First Love, I love that piece.
Fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
Novella, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Pardon?
His short tale, First Love, yeah.
Yes. I love that piece.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started reading African American women literature. Louise Merriweather, Maya Angelou, her early work before, because she was a dancer at first. And I thought that was fascinating. And of course, early work that I adapted and did at the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, Lincoln Center Museum for the Performing Arts, was Langston Hughes's The Weary Blues, a series of poems and all that. The great Margaret Danner. My best friend was a novelist, and Ron Milner. And the librarian in Detroit was a German guy named Kurtz Myers. He introduced me to Theater Arts magazine. I don't know if you know Theater Arts magazine, but it was
Some beautifully printed, beautifully typeset.
Yes.
Yeah, I have some copies. Yeah,
and they published a play in every issue.
Mm-hmm.
and they would have these short articles. But it was that kind of world, Frank, back then, that one becomes engulfed in. That's your life. That becomes who you are. And the deeper you go, the deeper you have to go to stay there. You know? And if there was a if there was a book party, I was always invited. I was deeply rooted in literature, African literature, Willie Kosasili from South Africa, writers from other states, playwrights. I would find a way of finding out what they had written because they could only get a reading. There was no theaters in that town. And then the universities started really hiring African American to run theater, to work in theater departments. And I became friends with them, and they were women, and they would graduate women and people, and they had no place to go. And so the new Federal Theater was a place they could go after graduating if they could not get a teaching job. So it's a struggle, yes. It's still a struggle, yes. We are doing conversations Tuesdays in June. These are conversations with people who are now well known in the world of acting and directing that started at New Federal Theater.
Did you define your work? Is it political, what you do? Are you a political theater?
No. It's each play is about and I guess that's everywhere. It's about its content and how it touches people. If it's a political love story, then we look at it as a love story, and that's what we deal with. If it's a political drama, we look for the dramatic structure and conflict in the play, not any political statement. So I don't know, when you say political, I would say the murder of George Floyd is political, but the story is his brother and family. You know, it is not about the cops. It is not about anyone other than, say, his girlfriend, maybe. His child his son that must grow up without a father. Those are the plays that we look for. Political, no, I don't get involved in that. For example, I don't think a play about I don't want to say Bush. Maybe I would. I don't think I'm Democrat, so you know. No, I don't get involved in political plays.
In this time of Corona, where you said you looked through, you know, your books, your articles, and your writing plays, in this time, did something in you changed? Do you have a different awareness of having been confined at home for now almost 3 months? Do you feel, for you also as a person, something has happened, or is this a time of wait and rest, and you go back out and continue?
No, something has changed. You know, it's like I can look around my apartment and whoa, I've got, you know, in my office here, I got, I think, 3 boxes of first editions. I think I said that earlier.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I never knew I had that many books that was first editions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I got maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 shelves of books. You know, my wife may have 5 or 6 shelves. So you go down the hallway, it's books. And in the years that I've been in this business, I've read almost all of these books. So I've come to conclusion that there are so many. A book is only a series of ideas by one person, and if you absorb them and listen to them, they will tell you a direction. They will give you an indication that this has happened before. This pandemic might have taken another shape or form, but it has happened before. So you better, I don't want to say better, you better be aware of it has happened before. The worst thing of all is if you are not aware that it has happened before. And so being at home, being observant, going through all this work, and my wife really has to do it. And we've never been confined for 3 months. We've never been in one space, and we talk about everything. We may talk about politics, you know. We may talk about an artist, and we may talk a great deal about the discussions of Rapping with Artists, the Tuesdays in June, about the wonderful journey of Essie Patha Murkison, the wonderful journey of Ruben Santiago Hudson. You know, these are journeys, and you say, whoa, man. And we'll talk about that. And they started off at New Federal. But you said, yeah.
So you really made a great contribution. Do you think, I mean, in the moment we experience as theater makers, we are not essential, you know, everything is shut down. And on the contrary, we would now contribute to, you know, to the virus, to the spread of it. Normally we don't have money, we don't have space. Now we don't have, and now it is even more obvious. Do you think when everything opens, theater is really needed? And do we need, I'm not just asking it rhetorically, but do you really, what do you think? Why do we need theater?
Well, we need art. Art nourishes us. Whether it's a sculpture by Otto Niels, a painting by Camille Yarborough, we need that nourishes us. We can look at that and it makes you feel something. When you go to a play, we need to see ourselves somehow reflected in the statement of the images that is projected on stage. We need a Raisin in the Sun. We need to know that Claudia McNeil, oh, she's very similar to my grandmother. And you think, wow, grandmother's all over. We need a sister like Ruby Dee, who was in that play, or a brother like Sidney Poitier. We need a reaffirmation. Art reaffirms who we are. And affirmation is the key to existing here in America. If you're not affirmed, you walk around burning buildings at night, robbing banks at night, killing, putting a Ku Klux Klan mask on and killing Emmett Till, throwing him in the river at night. You know, peaceful riots happen at night because we don't have art or music or theater anywhere in our lives. We don't have anything that reaffirms who we are. So we will assume, which is a terrible thing to do, that I'm out here alone. So if I knock this window in and break in tomorrow night at this rally and steal a ham or steal something, it's not going to last more than a day, you know? So I say, wow, so they don't have a reaffirmation. They don't have an identity. Art solidifies one's identity, you know? James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. I don't know, and Nobody Knows My Name. If Beale Street Could Talk. John A. Williams. Captain Black Man. I'm just throwing these out where I've read them and there is a reaffirmation in them, you know? And that's what I try to do in my art. I looked at a film I made that was streamed yesterday from the Museum of Modern Art called Right On, starring the original Last Poets. And with the advent of television, Felipe Luciano, who was in that film as a young man, maybe 18 or 19, as one of the last poets, did an introduction. And I looked at him now and in the film. And he's in Puerto Rico. So art, again, Frank, to answer your question, I hope I got it, but I think art is a reaffirmation. It solidifies one's identity. And in terms of identity in America, one could say, and James Baldwin said this, if you don't know who you are and where you are and what you are, you will root for all the Indians being killed by Gary Cooper. If you know who you are, you will realize, wait a minute, I'm the Indians. I wouldn't be rooting for Gary Cooper. but the story is about Gary Cooper. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Some white guy wrote this story, and that's what it's about. And that's why I'm involved in the arts. It's told by me and some Black writers. And people come because they see a reaffirmation. Now, after, I guess, 1971 or two, that film I made and produced is just as fresh as it was then when we did it then, with The Last Poets.
Yeah, no, you made a great contribution to American art and American theater, and I think your advice, you know, or your about that art actually, in a way, since everybody talks about defunding police, yeah, take some of that money and put it into art. It keeps us a healthy society, a good society. So now, of course, we do need a police, you know, that there's domestic violence or other things. You know, we need some kind of a civic force, but not how it is now. And that art makes a contribution, especially also in New York City, that makes the city what it is. We are coming closer, you know, to our end. I mean, two more questions. One is your colleagues now, let's say Nigel Smith at the Flea, Jonathan McCrory at the National Black Theater, the Classical Theater of Harlem, or the young writers, or the next generation with Susan Laurie Parks, Lynn Nottage, Katori Hall, and Thomas Bradshaw, and everybody. How are you in contact with them? Do you feel this is now the next generation doing their thing? Are there crossovers?
Well, Jonathan McCrory at the National Black Theater, I was very close with Barbara Antier, who founded the National Black Theater. I think the Flea, I'm not in contact with them because they did mostly white plays. Who else did you say?
Nigel Smith, who's now took over, and the other one is the Classical Theater of Harlem or others. So or also the contemporary Black playwrights and all of it. Do you feel you are part of is that a living structure, you know, of Black theater in New York, or is it because the city is so big and so vast that there are also islands producing their work?
Well, I think there are islands producing their work. I think you're right. Ty Jones at the Classical Theater of Harlem to produce outdoor theater at Mount Marsh Park, I think is wonderful. I just think it's absolutely wonderful. But what does he do in the winter? His summer theater program is awesome. But he's always looking for a space and funding for his theater. I don't think the Flea is in our league. I think we are about something else. Playwrights want to get their work done. They just want to see it. They just want to see the play up there. A lot of times it's ego. It's not ready to be put up there. A lot of times it's ready, and they don't have the personnel. They don't have the director who can give it direction. They don't have a producer who can talk to them about it. Art takes conversation, you know, whether it's over coffee. In the old days, it would be in the coffee houses. In the new days, it's over a beer. In the new days, it's over dinner. But it takes conversation. You got to talk about a piece of art. You got to talk about why this play really works, but I don't have the money to do it. So the writer don't leave thinking you hated his play or her play. You got to tell them. And I think that's what's missing. And sitting across from them, it's very difficult. It's very difficult sitting across from them when you really want to do a play and don't have the money to do it. And it's very difficult to do, let's say Ty Jones doing a piece about the classical theater of Harlem, a piece of Shakespeare. And it's really wonderful, but he doesn't have the money to do it. A classical play, and a Shakespeare or some classical work.
Yeah, no, I think you really point out that there has to be a funding structure in place to support our Black national theaters who made such a great contribution as an expression of arts of people who of color, of course, live here, but also in the world of theater, the innovations and the contributions they have made, the unique way to see what we call life or to experience life and to create meaning. But also said, yeah, we need to talk. It's about conversations. And I hope when all this is over, and there will be many, many talks, there will be no ways of funding, perhaps also structural fundings of places and organizations, less projects oriented, and that we all look a little bit closer in how the distribution of resources for making art are made at the moment in America. And as you point out, and so many others, and also this the DIY theater movement and all of it, they says, no, it's not just, it's not right, and it represents what is actually what's wrong. As a closing question, and we often do that, is to the young artists, the people who might now be listening, or to yourself when you were a young man coming from Detroit and coming to New York. What would you say to artists now at the moment if they are thinking about creating art? They're getting through Corona, through confinement, through the lockdown. What do you think is of real importance? What is meaningful? What we all should be keeping in mind?
Reading. You must read. Young artists must read. I would advise reading American Theater Magazine that will tell you what's going on in the theater across America. Read. And a young artist, a young Black artist, he's got the Schomburg here. He's got Lincoln Center Library. He's got all these places with nothing but books and history. You got to be aware. You got to know in which direction you want to go, and books will lead you there. You can't come in and wing it. You can't wing it anymore. You got to have a direction. And I think you can get so busy working and doing something and end up saying, oh, wow, this was wrong. God, I should have done this differently. But it's right there in the book. It's right there in The Actor Prepares by Stanislavski. It's right there in any of those books,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is something what we can do, and what we can control at the moment, and reading and perhaps also writing will become something that we also have again a closer look. Woody, thank you so much. We should do that every day. And here, it's just we feel we are scratching the surface, but I think we get an idea of what you did, what you stand for, that long history, that significant history, and also making New York, what it is as a center. So your contribution is tremendous. And I do hope that there will be ways to make funding for Black theater easier and to recognize it as a significant normal part of the landscape of American theater, and that we get away from the highly commercial theater and as we sometimes say, even the great chefs, von Gerichtens, who have the $300 menu restaurants, they now know we should have a bistro restaurant where it's still great food, but it's affordable. People can come together, families can come and enjoy it. And I think that great big industry of Broadway that also produces so many jobs and has 5, 6, 7 billions of revenue. So also we should find a way to distribute it. Also money from the US government. There's no Ministry of Culture here. It's a shocking. We just learned that the first thing that Bolsonaro in Brazil did, the new president, he dismantled the Ministry of Culture and destroyed any funding for potential critical voices or voices that, as you, Woodie King said, they create an affirmation of who we are, where we come from, and where we are going to. So this was a most significant contribution. Really thank you for being with us. This is the end of this week's talk. Next week, again, we take a flight across the world. We had this week 4 New York artists and Jean-Luc Nancy, the French philosopher, who talked to us about why we do need art. But next week we go back to our format, and we have Peter Schumann with us as an American representative, the great Peter Schumann from the Bread and Puppet Theater in Vermont. Will talk to us about theater, about protest, about puppets, about life, and the meaning of it all. We will have Govan Rubin and Terence Conrad from Malaysia, a theater company, a great theater company, partly also working with Australians who also have once been here and hear about how they experience Corona. The brilliant Tanya Bruguera, performance artist, also an installation artist from Cuba, very strong, politically engaged artist. Tanya Bruguera will be joining us. Hope Azeda from Rwanda, who did important work also after the genocide in Rwanda, the reconciliation work. And so Hope Azeda will talk to us how it feels, what it means to be a working artist in Rwanda at the moment in Africa. And then Saman Amini, a refugee from Iran who landed in the Netherlands and went to an acting school and then created a work of his own. A Place at the Table is one of his works. So he will tell us what it means for an Iranian refugee to come to another place, another town, and to create art, and also in the time of Corona. Thank you for HowlRound for allowing us to have our Segal talks with them each day in the week. It's a big commitment. So we thank Vijay, Thea, and Travis, and my Segal team, Andy and San Yang. And again, Woodie, really thank you for joining us. And it's something everybody should listen to in the community, and also reach out to you and help you to also get back. How is the outlook? Will you survive? Will the new Federal Theater survive?
We'll see.
It's still not clear, right? It would be tragic. There are some estimation that a third, perhaps, of all nonprofits might close. We don't know what will happen. It's a time of uncertainty, but as we all know, it is significant access to the arts, access to health, access to education are human rights, and this is what a society has to do for its citizens. So thank you all, and I hope to see you all again next week. Thank you for our listeners for taking such significant time out of their days. Thank you, Woodie, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good reading. Bye-bye.